Now I've shaped the outside of the vessel. I've used a spindle gouge for the top and a roughing gouge pretty much for the bottom here. I've sanded it down a little bit to smooth it out, and I've put a couple little decorations on the outside. If you want to decorate the outside, this is the time to do it. The form is nice and solid. It won't flex while you're doing that. Now the next stage is I take this long drill bit. I used to use a Forstner bit, but sometimes you get lodged in the middle of the form, and that takes you a long time to get it out if you can. So I've got the tail sock all locked down, ready to go. I'm going to turn on the lathe, moderate speed, and then I'm just going to go ahead and start to work this drill bit down into the vessel until I get it to the depth that I want. Okay, now I've got the vessel shaped, and I've got the inside of the vessel bored out to a depth that I can use to then, next step is to hollow. What I use for hollowing is the Kelton hollowing rig. It's mounted to the lathe. I have a General 25-650 lathe, which allows me to turn a 16-inch bowl. So I use the smaller of the Kelton rigs. They have a larger one that they make for the larger lathes. The tools that I use in the end here are Kelton tools. I use a much more hooked tool at the beginning to allow me to get under the shoulder of the vessel. They have a couple more tools here. One is a little less of a hook, and then one's a straight, depending on where I am in the form itself. I've used these tools with handles, and that works, but it's a little less stable. The Kelton rig provides me much more stability and more control when I do the cuts. With the tools themselves, they have a nice cutting action. If you do a heavier burr when you sharpen, then they have a rapid cut. If you do a little less burr, then they're a smoother cut to do some finishing cuts. So. The other point about these tools is that when I start to cut, they'll create shavings, they'll create sawdust instead of shavings, and then when I'll use a compressor to blow with air to blow the sawdust out as I go in here, so you won't get a catch, or you won't bind up the tool with the shavings of the sawdust. Okay, so now I'm going to start. I'm going to insert the tool here and back off the point so it's not touching the form. Then I turn on the lathe, and then I start to hollow. And it's an easy action. The tool is resting against the tool rest, and the rig is facing a little bit further back. So by itself, the tool kind of rests naturally on the tool rest. And then you can hear as I cut. It's just a matter of just cutting back and forth, just going back and forth. I'll stop every once in a while to clean out the sawdust and measure the thickness of the wall to see that I'm not going too thin on the outside, or the wall thickness. Okay, now that I've been hollowing out the vessel for a little bit here, as I go, I measure the wall thickness with these calipers here. These Kelton calipers are a little bit different than the most, but they're very good at measuring down to the wall thickness way down into the vessel. This is about a 7-8 inch high vessel. It looks pretty good. So what I want to do now is show you a couple things that I've done. One thing is that as I turn down hollow out the vessel, I start at the top and I work my way down. That way, as the walls begin to flex in the hollow vessel, the wood underneath here will support the actual walls and to keep them from flexing as much. The other thing too is that as I got about 5 or 6 inches deep into this form, I used another aspect of that Kelton rig. I can turn it around and use a different thickness of the tool. The ones I was showing before were 1/2 inch. These are 1/2 inch tools, and for hollowing tools, and these are 5/8 inch. So I just turn it around. It's a little bit longer, a little bit more sturdier, so it can go down further. So once I get 5 or 6 inches down into the form, then I start using the heavier tools. But I've got this all cleaned up. I've sanded it a little bit, and so the next step is to start to part it off. And what I want to do is I know the depth of the hollowing, so I don't cut into it, and I know that the hollowing stops probably around here, so I'm going to cut right down into there with this 16-inch thin curved parting tool. And if you come around on this side here, and you can see I'm going to angle it a little bit towards the top of the form so that when I'm done it'll be a little bit of concave. You want concave on the bottom of the form so it won't rock when you get done. So I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to part this off. You can ruin the whole operation in just one moment here if this doesn't go right. So here we go. Pull it down just a little bit. Now you keep your right hand and left hand up here so as the form comes off, it'll come off in your hand, hopefully not on the floor. It'll start to flutter, and it comes off. I'll turn that off. You can see the bottom. That's really good. There's just that little dimple in the bottom, and then in my next step here is I'll put this on the headstock, and I'll clean that up and sand it off, and we should be about done. Now that I've parted the form off, or the vessel off, and I've reverse chucked it. I've got it on a friction fit here, and it wobbles a little bit, but I only have that little nub in the middle left, and I think I can get away with just sanding this down. So I'm going to start off real slow. It's going to vibrate a little bit, but I'm going to hold my one hand over it and then just work on some sanding of that. Probably if I was a little bit more experienced, I could probably take that, but I think this works for me right now. And what I want to show you though is I can sand this down here and that'll be good enough. Now what I want to show you is, since I had a lip on that vessel, I needed to get support of the shoulder, so I'm going to pull this off here. And it's on pretty firm, but you can see that I dug down with a parting tool way down in there, so that not only will the lip fit into that, but the shoulder will fit on this piece here, so it'll give it more support. And so I can sand it without breaking it. And that's pretty much the form. I'll do a wrap up here when I'm all done with this. And here's the final product. It's the hollow form that if you remember, we started off with a log. It was a maple log that came down in a storm a few months ago. I started by creating a cylinder, roughing that piece down into a cylinder, and then I mounted that cylinder onto a 4-jaw chuck. I shaped the outside form of when I was mounting on the chuck. From there, I drilled a hole bored a hole down into the center, and that was a 3/4 inch hole, by the way. From there, I hooked up the Kelton hollowing rig, and I used the 1/2 inch hollowing tools to bore out or to hollow out this vessel. And I did use a 5/8 inch at the end to get further down into the bottom of this form. From there, I reversed it and onto a friction fit onto the headstock, and I cleaned up the bottom, as you can see. Got it pretty cleaned up there. And this is the final product. There are other hollowed forms that I have next to me that I've done as well with the same setup and the same operation. I've only been doing this for about 6 months now, so hopefully as time goes on, I expect to get better and be more accurate with my turns and do a lot more of this stuff. I enjoy it very much. If you'd like to learn more about what I do and see some pictures and read some articles about my work and the articles that I've written, you can visit my website at www.blindwoodturner.com. Thank you very much.